Greetings, lovely people, and welcome to Fast Reviews, where today we're going to be talking about Eyes of Wakanda. So, as always, spoilers ahead for all 4 episodes of Season 1 of Eyes of Wakanda. And, yeah, getting right into it with 2 criticisms and 1 vague positive, though, take of it what you will. I really don't like the art style for this show, and that is not to say it's bad. There's definitely some shots, especially some of the scenery shots and some of the, overall landscape shots that are really well done. And I think most of my issue actually comes down to that I don't really like the character models, which is really unfortunate when this is such a character-driven series. I just don't like it. And this is not to say that the What If art style is, perfect by any means, but that at least I enjoy and I think is fluid enough to actually work for animation and really captures the feel of the MCU. I don't think this animation and art style works really, and it's really unfortunate because there are definitely moments that I think could work really well in that What If style, that, more conventional 3D art style. The fact this is so almost overly stylized, I personally didn't really like. And if you did enjoy it for that aspect, power to you. I really hope that, you get the most out of this, and I hope they don't change the art style in the future, just because, consistency is one thing, but also, I'm sure plenty of people really do love this art style, and the way it is different from What If, it's not the same thing that we've been seeing for the last couple of years from Marvel Animation, and, yeah, it has its ups and downs. There are some good shots. It's just, for me, it didn't quite work. And on a similar note, in terms of just something that is there every single episode that I just didn't really enjoy, the intro sequence. And I know that's probably controversial as well, but it's too long, it's a bit too boring, it's just not a very interesting intro sequence. I'm not saying that intro sequences to Marvel shows are typically like action-packed and, actually worth watching on repeat. But this one is just so slow, and I know it's technically showing, at least in part, a history of Wakanda and stuff like that. I know it is, tied into the overall themes of the show, which this is a historical, essentially, for the MCU, which is, I believe, the first true, historical piece we've seen, other than, the obvious ones like First Avenger. But yeah, this is a very interesting show, and I feel like the intro sequence just doesn't do it justice. The music, while apt for a Wakanda series, it is very much inspired by that kind of culture, it's a bit dull. I don't know, the entire intro sequence to me just doesn't work, and it's really unfortunate because obviously that is supposed to set the theming, set the tone for the entire series. I wouldn't say it's as bad as something like Secret Invasion's intro sequence, the AI slop that it was, but it's definitely not that good, and there's definitely been so many better intro sequences, including, once again, not to, keep comparing it, but the What If intro sequence. As much as it isn't, music and stuff like that, I pretty much watch that every single time. It is one of my favourite aspects of the series. Even on a bad episode, I still think that the fact that we have that intro sequence really does tie it together and makes it feel more epic than it maybe actually is in terms of its stories. But yeah, Eyes of Wakanda really struggles in that regard. However, I will say, on the opposite end of the episode, the outro sequences, the credit sequences, are beautiful. They're in a almost like classic Disney-esque style, 2D imagery. It is obviously in the same vein as a lot of Disney Plus, TV series, namely The Mandalorian, where it is clearly some level of, I don't know, like proto-art or whatever. It is definitely supposed to be shots reimagined from the episode, but they are in a really nice art style, and I really did enjoy seeing those, just seeing the different takes, and I'm sure some of it is concept art, don't get me wrong, but yeah, a lot of it looks really, really good, and the music there is often a little bit more upbeat, not necessarily throughout, but yeah, the outro sequence, the credit sequence, is definitely stronger than the intro, and yeah, with those caveats out of the way, let's just kind of go through episode by episode and kind of discuss what happens, my things that I like and things that I didn't so much. So starting off with episode 1, Into the Lion's Den. We are in Crete, I can never remember how to pronounce it, 1200 BC, and we follow the Wakandan Noni, who is a war dog. Well, we find out later that she becomes a war dog, and she is obviously in Crete and kidnapped by a warlord of sorts, or a wannabe monarch of sorts, called the Lion. We find out that the Lion is actually a Wakandan himself, who has betrayed and stolen a bunch of artifacts from Wakanda, and she, Noni, has been put in charge of essentially capturing him, taking him back to Wakanda, or in other ways, just defeating him, just getting him out of the picture, making it so he's not a threat to the future of Wakanda. And yeah, the overall vibe of this, I guess, episode is the idea that the world shouldn't know about Wakanda. And I know that's a very common thing, even up to Wakanda Forever, in fact. But yeah, it doesn't really play very well into actually having an entertaining story. Essentially just breaking down into a number of mini boss fights, which is alright. You've got one with bow, one with daggers, one with swords, one with a spear, that sort of thing. But really, it doesn't work for me. I don't know, once again, if it's the animation or if I just didn't really like the ideas represented. But either way, the Lion's, biggest, most powerful acolytes, or whatever you want to call them, are defeated one by one by Noni, and the Lion suits up in his Wakandan gear that he stole. And yeah, he was sent to the outside world by Wakanda. That's the reveal. That's the big twist here. Which doesn't really make that much sense, because he is even the one who refers to what he does and what Noni does as war dogs. Though it is implied in a future episode that the first war dog is Noni. So Noni is simultaneously the first war dog and also one of many war dogs according to the Lion. It's a little bit confusing in that way. Maybe it's just a thing of the history of Wakanda is a mess and, doesn't really or shouldn't really be trusted. I don't really know what the, intentions were with that. It really feels a bit backwards. I don't know. But the point with the Lion is he wants to unite all people across the world. Technically within bondage, he wants to enslave everyone, essentially, and then have their kids be, freed and united and, rule the world together. It's a very odd plan. It kind of reminds me of Killmonger, which would typically be a compliment. However, it just doesn't work in the same way as Killmonger. But yeah, the Lion is basically just Killmonger, and we have a boss fight between him and Noni. And of course, this goes very poorly for the Lion, because Noni is our main character, and, of course, she wins. However, we then have the Lion do a Predator self-destruct when he loses. That happens. He just, detonates a bomb. And while Noni manages to survive, she doesn't manage to collect any of the artifacts that the Lion stole, and regardless is offered the role of Dora Milaje, which she previously failed to become. That is her entire backstory, is that she failed to become a Dora Milaje. So she actually refuses that and is instead offered the role of a war dog, the exact thing that she's just been doing, of which she does, apparently at least, accept. And that is episode 1. That is the entirety of it. I don't think I'm really skipping over much here, despite the fact that I haven't really spoke for that long about it. It's not a great episode. I didn't enjoy it that much, but believe me, the series does actually get better from here. And yeah, that was episode 1. Episode 2, Legends and Lies, is set a little bit after, in Troy, 1100 BC, roughly. It is the it's the Trojan War, it's the Battle of Troy, and we don't exactly know when that was supposed to take place, but obviously it has to take place later than 1200 BC, which means that it's probably around 1100 BC. And we do actually see Noni in this episode, so we know it's not too long after, but we don't have an exact year for this one. This is the one episode that doesn't have an exact year for some reason. Kind of weird in that way, but as is, it's fine. this is, the Trojan War, so Odysseus is attacking Troy. Achilles is actually part of Odysseus's army. He infiltrates Troy, and we are introduced to our Wakandan for the episode, Memnon, who is, of course, a war dog. And he's actually shown to be really close with Achilles. He has, saved Achilles on many occasions. He actually takes an arrow to the hand for Achilles, and this actually shows some Wakandan technology, which is some weird, I assume, heart-shaped herb spray that instantly just heals his hand, and no one questions the fact that his hand gets healed immediately. A little bit odd there, but I'm not really going to question it too much. We have a little bit of Greek soldier racism, as in a Greek soldier is racist to Memnon even, which is kind of swept under the rug pretty quickly. He's just kind of ignored. I don't know whether it was even intended to come off as, subtly racism, but, it's an odd scene. I'm gonna just skip over it for now, but essentially Achilles just backs up Memnon and goes, no, this guy, he's saved all of us. He's our friend, he's our brother, that sort of thing. All the typical anti, we are all one group despite everything. It's an interesting moment. But, of course, Odysseus does what Odysseus does and introduces the Trojan horse. We're doing that story, yeah, that is what this episode is. It is the story of the Trojan horse, and it was really fun how they did it. So we actually are shown another piece of Wakandan tech. It's like a Morse code communication device. I don't know how it works. It's not explained. It's just Wakandan technology being weirdly advanced for no apparent reason. But yeah, it's a Morse code communication device. And yeah, that's the extent of the Wakandan technology in this one. We have the full infiltration of Troy, and then stealth fails. So obviously they get into Troy with the Trojan horse and, sneak around, assassinate a few of the guards, stuff like that. And then a guard pulls on a bell, sets off all the rest of the Trojan military, and yeah, they have to go on the offensive. Memnon just abandons Achilles. So it has to be said at this point that Helen of Troy is the one currently holding the Wakandan artifact that the war dog is after. It's just a little gemstone that's around her neck. Technically it's metal, I know, but that's what he's after. So Memnon just abandons his friend and, the rest of the army that he's supposed to be part of, and simply just takes the artifact from Helen of Troy. There's not really an argument or anything. He just pulls it off her and then lets them escape. It's very weird. But obviously Achilles from that feels betrayed, fights Memnon, who just straight up just cuts Achilles' heel. It doesn't kill him instantly, no. Instead, he stabs him in the gut, and that's how he kills him. Yeah, that's right. In the MCU universe, Memnon, a Wakandan, killed Achilles. I don't think that really needs to be stated as ridiculous, but yeah, that is an insane fact of the MCU, apparently. Achilles was killed during the Trojan War by a Wakandan. The more you know, I guess. This universe is more and more insane. He does pay his respects. He places coins in his eyes for the ferryman, a classic Greek tradition. And we cut to 6 months later, where Memnon is revealed to not be called Memnon. He's back in Wakanda, and he's referred to as Bakai, which is actually a name of one of the legends, I suppose, from the Wakanda movies. One of the background statues is Bakai. And yeah, Bakai is Memnon is Bakai, he's a war dog, etc., etc. And this is where Noni appears. Because Noni, in her, old age, is the war dog director. Referred to by Bakai as director. And the fact that that is a term used in 1200 BC or 1100 BC or whenever this is actually set is kind of hilarious to me. But yeah, no, that is what Noni is. Noni is in charge of the war dogs, and Bakai basically says he wants to be out on the field again. So that's what happens. He presumably goes out, has more adventures, becomes a legend, and that's the last we actually see of both of these characters, of both Noni and Bakai, because we then jump forward for the next episode. Episode 3, Lost and Found, takes us to China, 1400 AD, so we're jumping a total of about 2,500 years, which is a huge leap. And I assume they only did that for the sake of them wanting to show more advanced technologies and things that were, like, relatively more recent in the MCU history, though. Yeah, the decisions here are a little bit all over that. It has 2 episodes back-to-back that are relatively close together, followed by an episode that is forever away from that one, but far more recent. And then we'll get into it with episode 4, but that one is even more recent. Like, that is relatively recent history when, put into context of everything else. But yeah, China, 1400 AD, we have Basha, another Wakandan war dog who is stealing a dragon statue for the Wakandan artifact that is the tongue of that statue. It is a holy relic of the area, and yeah, people aren't very happy that he has stolen it. He escapes on a Wakandan jet in 1400 AD. In the 1400s, the Wakandans had flight. That is forever insane to me. And of all the technology, I can almost accept like the ancient Morse code device that apparently can go around the world and stuff like that. I can almost accept that. But they have airships. They have straight up like planes. They have like rocket propelled planes. I know that technology is ridiculously advanced, but that is taking it a little bit too far. They also have telecommunications. Like they have like a comm system within the jet and within the HQ of the War Dogs as well. It's kind of ridiculous, but I'm not really complaining about it. I'm just saying how insane it is that they have this level of technology in the 1400s. Because to me, it is absolutely ridiculous that is a thing. But anyway, there is a stowaway on the airship. The one and only, or not the one and only, I suppose, the first, presumably, Iron Fist, who is called Jirani, and she is actually the caretaker of the monastery or whatever it was that Basha stole the dragon from, and so she's out to steal it back. She wants the dragon statue back, not understanding that the tongue or whatever is, obviously Wakandan. She doesn't really care about that anyway, but the point is, how many coincidences are going around Basha right now? Like, he managed to find this temple that had a Wakandan artifact, he stole it, he managed to escape perfectly fine, and then it turns out that the person that he, quote-unquote befriended, a little bit deeper than that, I'd say, but, is actually an Iron Fist. You can't write this, or well, clearly you can because they did, but, it is ridiculous, and this entire episode is crazy to me, but, yeah, so the Iron Fist fights a bunch of the various war dogs, like, absolutely just throws them to the ground, like, defeats them handily, and goes to try and find Basha, but also to try and find the dragon head. And this all leads to 2 very fun scenes. One is a fight on the train system. Yes, the train system from Black Panther is here in 1400. It's not as advanced. It's not quite as, like, futuristic. But it's still a train system in the 1400s, and I just think that's ridiculous. Especially because it's on the same style of, like, zero-gravity rails and, like, hyperspeed movement and stuff. It's crazy. But, yeah, we have a fight on there. Nowhere as good as the one, despite its flaws, in Black Panther. But still pretty fun. I quite like the jumping around between the different trains and everything. Generally, it is a pretty cool little scene. And then we have a fight in the artifact room. We get a few references to the previous episodes. We actually have the lion's mask. And yeah, it goes about as well for Basha as you'd expect, I suppose. From the main character fighting an Iron Fist. Nothing really goes badly for either of them. Neither of them really get defeated. And essentially, they both get exactly what they wanted. Because Basha just kind of gets away with doing everything wrong because he tells a few lies to the leader of the War Dogs, I suppose, at this point. I didn't really catch what his actual role was. He's a chancellor or something like that. Not chancellor, that's the wrong term. He's a council member, anyway. And he also gets his, I guess, handler a position as a war dog. Actually gets him some, field work, which is interesting. But yeah, so the Iron Fist takes the tongue out of the dragon and gives that back to Basha, and takes the statue head, I suppose, the dragon head, back home. And that is the resolution. this episode was crazy and actually had some really fun fight scenes and everything. It actually has. I will mention this specifically. There is an excellent moment. It's only probably 20 seconds of the artifact room fight where all the fighting is going on in the reflection of these Wakandan mirror blades, and it is beautiful and it's so well done. It's one of the few moments of action that I actually think look absolutely excellent in this current art style, and yeah, I genuinely really liked that moment, but unfortunately, the episode, every episode just struggles with the fact that I don't like the art style. But still, that was a great scene within the artifact room fight, and yeah, I just wanted to point that one out. But yeah, that is episode 3. So with the final episode, episode 4, The Last Panther, we are in Adwa, which is Ethiopia, in 1896. Very, compared to the rest of them, very recent history. Literally a little over 140 years ago, 130 years ago, like very recently in terms of modern day Earth and modern day MCU to some extent. And we follow 2 different war dogs. Obviously, you know, Bashar hasn't managed to survive this long. With Prince Tafari, who is apparently the 3rd son of the current king of Wakanda, so definitely not anyone of real relevance to the wider MCU, as well as war dog Kuda. And these 2 are very much just doing the buddy cop thing. Kuda is, you know, the older, more experienced agent, and Prince Tafari, this is his first mission, and they have to get a Wakandan axe. That's all it is. It's just a Wakandan axe. There is more significance to it, but I'll get to it at the end. And yeah, just covering the random advanced technology they have. They have earpieces for communication. You know, like in the late 1800s. It's once again, it's a weird thing that they just kind of have this technology. I know they're advanced. I know that's kind of the point. I know all this is done on purpose so that people like me say, wow, Wakanda really is advanced, and they've been advanced for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I know that's the entire point, but it does just kind of feel a little ridiculous when, you know, in 1896, they just tap their ear and can just talk to each other from like any distance. It just, I don't know, it seems a bit ridiculous to me, but either way, Tafari, against Kuda's wishes and commands and orders and whatever else, manages to get the artifact in like 30 seconds. We don't see it happen, he just does it off screen. We just have Kuda yelling at him over his earpiece, and then Tafari just appears with the axe. He's like, look, I got it, I did it. Which, yeah, fair enough. They then drive away in a Wakandan buggy that goes from having 3 wheels to 4 wheels to 3 wheels again. It's a bit of a weird vehicle, but, you know, Wakandan technology, it's weirdly inconsistently advanced, because this thing does not look as advanced as the airship from episode 3. But, yeah, either way, they are then attacked by a time-traveling Black Panther. This series is insane. So, yeah, we have a Black Panther who essentially just teleports in, partially invisible. They crash the buggy, and after a little bit of a scuffle, they are shown the future. And around 500 years in the future, so presumably somewhere around 2396, there is a threat from the edge of the galaxy that attacks Earth, and they are very much just insectoids. I can't tell, based on everything that I've, you know, looked into, as well as just what they look like, if they're supposed to be something from the comics. I would hazard a guess they're not, and they just happen to be, you know, some random alien species that just happens to be insectoid. They don't look like any of the, you know, more common Marvel insectoid races, so I'm assuming they're just a creation for this episode, for this series. But I suppose we'll find out if there's ever like a season 2 of Eyes of Wakanda, or if this ever gets followed up in a different story. But yeah, from that, we then find out that this Black Panther is the, you know, at that time Queen of Wakanda, and stealing the axe, which Tafari did so easily, is what ruins the future. This Black Panther, this time-traveling Black Panther, has gone back through all the previous episodes of Eyes of Wakanda, looked at all the artifacts and gone, the axe is definitely the one that causes the end of everything. Don't know how she came to that conclusion, don't know what kind of technology they're working with. It's Wakanda, so I'm sure it's far more advanced than what you'd think for 2396. But yeah, so stealing the axe ruins the future, and the Panther essentially warns them that it has to be returned or the world will end in 500 years, which seems like a long time to care about this, but we'll get into exactly why the axe matters. But either way, the Panther has to go back due to how the time travel technology works and is protecting the time window of sorts that has been created in the future to go back to, 1896. So while this Starship Troopers ensues, we have the bugs killing we have the bugs absolutely just destroying the Dora Milaje, as well as near enough killing, if not realistically killing, the Black Panther. And all while this is happening, Tafari completes the mission. Once again, it makes it look pretty easy. It takes them longer and they have to fight a few guards and stuff like that, but generally he just kind of does it. Kuda does get crushed by some rubble, though he does survive it, and Tafari also survives everything, even though the building he's in also gets hit by a cannonball, so I guess these two are just immune to damage. But either way, the future is saved. Tafari takes full responsibility for the council, whatever you want to say, and yeah, that's the end of the story. We then find out the axe is the exact axe we see in Black Panther being taken by Killmonger. This series literally only exists to set up Killmonger in the first Black Panther. I'm not joking. That is the entire purpose of this series. And I don't really get it. I really don't. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this. Not only do I not personally like the animation style, and fair enough, that is purely me, that is purely, my thoughts and opinions. If you differ from that, that's perfectly fine and perfectly acceptable. But, it also doesn't really serve a major purpose. They add this major threat in the future only for the thing that causes that to be a major threat to be undone by just the events of the regular MCU. Which essentially just means it doesn't matter. We didn't need to have any of this information, and I feel like the time and effort that went into making Eyes of Wakanda could have very much been put into maybe another good season of What If, or maybe something that explores the future or a different universe or something like that. This is the multiverse saga, and fair enough, technically it's an alternate future that is stopped, so we technically are getting a little bit of alternate universe, multiversal happenings because of how time travel works in the MCU. But at the end of the day, that reality is purged. It is erased from time because of the interactions between everything. Though, technically in the MCU, that's not how time travel works anyway. The TVA ensure that those branches are pruned, but, also those branches shouldn't ever have... There's a lot of weird inconsistencies with how time travel works in this series, and as in the MCU series, not the franchise, I should say, not specifically Eyes of Wakanda. It's pretty consistent within Eyes of Wakanda that if you, stop this thing from happening, that reality ceases. But that's not how it works in Endgame. They just travel the multiverse. I don't know. It's a bit of a mess, and it's a bit confusing, and quite honestly, I don't really get it. I don't get the point of it, and yeah, in general, I didn't really enjoy it. There are good moments. I like some of the fight scenes. I like the Iron Fist in episode 3. I think that's really fun. Having Iron Fist actually be in the MCU and it not be Netflix's Iron Fist it's really good. Next, can we have Nova in something? I'd really like Nova in something, please. But yeah, it's a weird series, and yeah, I really don't know what to think of it in the grand scheme of things. It is not even the best Wakandan piece of media in the MCU, and it's one of the weaker series in the entire MCU in general, which is really unfortunate because I like the Wakandan stuff. I really like Black Panther. I quite like, though nowhere near as much, Wakanda Forever. I think that's a perfectly fine movie. It does have its flaws, but I think I did a review of that one at the time, so maybe check that one out if that exists. I don't even remember if I did a review of that. I watched it on the same day as Black Adam. That was a mistake. Anyway, that tangent aside, I was hoping this would be really fun, and I would enjoy it, but yeah, the animation isn't for me, and I honestly don't think this really adds any real value to the overall MCU, which is really unfortunate. All it really serves to do is give us a little bit of Wakandan history, which is fine, is reasonable, I like that, and show just how advanced Wakanda is through the fact that they have all this various technology hundreds, if not thousands of years way too early. And yeah, for me, it just falls a little bit flat on its face, which is really unfortunate, and that does mean I'm giving this probably the lowest rating of anything I've reviewed on this channel. 5 out of 10. It's acceptable. It's a show. It's a series. I didn't hate every moment of it, but there is so little value to this that unless you are a completionist in terms of MCU content, I'd personally skip it. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like it, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss an upload. Always comment below your thoughts and feelings on Eyes of Wakanda, and I'll see you next time. Bye!